Oh, you can't see me. I guess it would make a difference if you could see me, right? You could hear me, but not see me. New software. So, hi, how is everyone doing this evening? Thank you for joining us. I appreciate you being here. I'm Eve with the Baby's Booty, and we have an awesome show lined up this evening. I'm super excited because this is a hot topic, super, super hot, especially for those who do embroidery. All right. So, usually a person will come across an embroidery machine or be bequeathed an embroidery machine and they get introduced to embroidery. Usually, that's how that goes. Well, once you start doing embroidery, and you get some of the designs and things from out other places, you start to say, you know what, I kind of want this design. I want my own design. Or someone comes and says, hey, I need this logo, my logo on a hat or a shirt or a bag, whatever the case may be. And you're stuck like, okay, what do I do now? All right, I have a logo or I have a design. How do I get it on my embroidery machine? Well, that process is digitizing. All right, and I get that question a whole heck of a lot. The digitizing, how do I digitize? How do I get my picture switched over to the embroidery machine? How much does it cost? How hard is it? What software program should I use? That is usually the top question that we get around here for digitizing and how that works. Well, tonight we have a special guest that's going to join us this evening here shortly. And he has been doing digitizing for a very, very, very long time. And I have been telling you guys that if you want to digitize on a level that you can either sell your designs or have a professional look of your embroidery design, then you really need to check out John Deere to learn how to use Wacom Hatch. Now, I also talk about other embroidery programs, digitizing, sorry, programs, and they're out there. Don't get it wrong. There are other programs that are available. However, I know for myself, I've gotten excellent results out of Wacom Hatch, and we'll be showing a quick demonstration with Wacom Hatch, but the digitizing basics, for the most part, are the same. No matter what program you use, as long as you're able to lay down stitches with your program, the basics are there. So you can't go wrong taking his classes, taking his courses, checking out his website. John Deere is it. Okay. And y'all know I don't talk about stuff or bring stuff on this show if I don't 100% believe in it. And this, I tell you, John Deere is it. So I have been trying to put this together for quite some time. So I am above excited realms to even have him here and joining us on the show. And I am eternally grateful for him doing that. So without getting too deep into his part of the show, normally what I do is I come in and I say hi to everyone. But tonight, I think what we're going to do is kind of save that for another show. And what we're going to do is get ourselves together to go ahead and get into his presentation. But I do want to point out a few things. Number one, here at the Baby's Booty, we have our own Facebook group. You're welcome to join that. Also, here on YouTube, we have memberships. So if you would like to support the channel, that is an option for you. We appreciate any support that you give. We have 3 levels of memberships, and our top level are the captains. And those guys have the opportunity to join us live here on the show in the second half. So we're going to bring them in on video. So I thought that was going to be a really cool feature he allowed us to do for our captains. Also, for every member of the Hoop Group here on YouTube, the YouTube Hoop Group, we have emojis. I put some new ones in there, y'all. So for the members, for the YouTube Hoop Group members, you have a new emoji that's a question mark, right? So if you have a question you would like to ask him or a question you would like to ask me, you can put that question mark there and it will make your question stand out brighter for me. So I'll make sure that I don't miss your question, right? So you can go ahead and do that. Check those emojis out. We appreciate you guys being here with us this evening. And I'm just really looking forward to this. So the first half of our show, so up until about 10 minutes after 10, is his presentation. He's going to go over some basics about digitizing software, the Legacy Club, which is super awesome. And he'll do a quick demonstration for us. The second half of the show is where you guys come in and you'll be able to ask your questions as well. So please jot your questions down so you don't forget. And then also, if you have your questions written down, he may answer them. And then you can say, oh, well, there's the answer to my question. Also, by jotting your question down, you can also take notes because trust me, you do not want to miss out on any of this presentation or the information. Also, I mentioned in the title of this video, there's a free digitizing cheat sheet. I didn't put the link below, but we're going to talk about that tonight, and I'll provide the link in the chat of this video later on in the show. So stick around. You do not want to miss that cheat sheet either, right? So I appreciate you guys for joining us. I definitely want to say thank you so much to all the captains that are here. You may get a updated email for the link to join in so I can make sure everybody's link works. But you'll be checking that out during the show. So definitely it's not exclusing to a particular software, Adina. As I mentioned before, the basics go across any digitizing software as long as you're able to lay down stitches. All right. It's just that we know that there's positive results. I've received positive results. I love the results of Wacom Hatch and I love the ease of use of the software. But as long as you're able to lay down stitches, you should be able to digitize. Okay. And he's going to teach you how to digitize properly or explain the basics of digitizing. And it has to be done a certain way. If you want professional results. So anyways, I don't want to get into his presentation because he's the professional. I'm not. So I'm learning just as much as you guys are. So we're going to go ahead and bring Mr. John Deere on with us and definitely appreciate you guys for coming in and joining us. And as I mentioned, I'll be scanning the chat as the show goes on. But please keep your questions for after his presentation. Okay. So let's get Mr. John on and give you guys what you came here for because it ain't me. All right. Hey, Mr. John Deere, how are you? Thank you for joining us.
I'm good. I'm good. How are you, Eve?
I'm good. I'm good this
Okay.
evening.
Well,
We got a room full of folks that want to learn about digitizing, and I'm not the expert you are. So I'm going to let
well,
you take it away.
thank you. Thank you. First off, I just want to thank you and tell you it's an honor and a privilege to be on the Baby's Booty because
Thank
I just
you.
wanted to say that a few times, Baby's Booty, because that's such a great name. So this
Thank
is
you.
so cool. And I read a little bit about your about on the website, and it all started because you were looking to fulfill a certain niche, right? You wanted to,
Right.
yeah, so that's awesome. And I would
Right.
love to hear your story. So when you do an interview, please let me know because
Okay.
I'm just always amazed. So
Okay.
awesome.
We'll definitely do that.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for joining us. And I'm actually a little bit nervous because it's not often that I'm the one sitting on this side of it where I'm being interviewed. So it's going to be kind of cool. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a presentation about digitizing and a little bit about I guess, the theory and the history behind it. And for those of you who haven't met me before, my name really is John Deere. I am actually fourth generation in the embroidery industry, and I've been digitizing for 37 years, so for a long, long time. And probably the most important things of my career, the most important parts of my career, were actually established before I was born, and then I was able to learn from others. And that's something I want to kind of put a real emphasis on, is that, there's nothing new under the sun. I did not, learn all of these or teach myself all of these techniques. I learned and apprenticed from other people who spent decades refining their trade. So embroidery and digitizing is something that has been passed along. I know a lot of you might be amazed with this, but mechanically creating designs has been around for over 150 years. Now I'm going to share a screen here, and I know, Eve, you're going to have to probably help me, I guess, approve this.
Yes.
And okay, so let's try this. Yay, let's see if that works.
There you go.
Awesome. Can we see that? Actually, I have my son James here. I should let you know also that I am, I guess, fourth generation, and all three of my kids are in the industry as well. So we have 5 generations in the embroidery industry. But I wanted to show you this really, really old Shifley loom, and this is a manual pantograph machine. And the reason why I wanted to show you this is because this is how digitizing, or they used to call it punching, was done 100 years ago. And that guy sitting at the end of the loom over here, he has a little pantograph that he's holding in his hand. He's spinning a wheel beside him, which starts the rotation of the needles going in and out of the loom. And there's 20 yards of fabric being spanned up and embroidered all simultaneously as he is literally going back and forth with the pantograph on his hand. A paper draft was pinned on that actual board. So here's the thing I like to tell people: if you have ever had any frustration embroidering a design on a 5x7 hoop, and we're talking one design on one hoop, can you imagine doing 1,084 pieces all at the same time on 20 yards of fabric? So this has changed a little bit, and I will also let you know that I did learn how to punch manually one stitch at a time, the same way you see that gentleman sitting there. Now, a little bit of history. My grandparents actually immigrated after World War II to Canada, and they did work in the embroidery industry. They were, like most immigrants after the war, they were very poor, and they did get a loan from the Catholic Church to start their own business in 1958. And this machine that you see sitting here, that's my Aunt Helen, that's my grandfather, my grandmother's in the back. That is the first machine that they started out with. They borrowed $7,000, which was a lot of money back then, from the Catholic Church. And this machine is actually right here, my grandfather standing at the pantograph, and that's how you created designs on those machines, literally one stitch at a time. Now, to give you an idea, there was no reverse, there was no undo buttons, there was no backing up. You literally had to learn how to punch or digitize one stitch at a time and make sure that it was executed perfectly, because you were running thousands of pieces of embroidery that were going to be for resale. So there was no margin for error whatsoever. And that's why I often tell people that learning to punch back in the old days, we're talking about the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, all the way into the 70s, you would apprentice to learn the art of punching. You won't find any, I guess, books or material on how to digitize going back 100 years. And the reason why is it was job security for the people who had that as a trade. Once they spent a decade becoming a Shifley master, they did not want to share their secrets with anybody. Now, the only reason why I learned was because when I was 17 years old, and I did work in my grandparents' factory when I was younger. Actually, here, before we go on, here's a couple of pieces of lace that I wanted to show you. The reason why I'm showing you this is the original name of our company was Dress Crest Embroidery Limited. We actually did dress or yard goods, and we did lace for the bridal industry in the 50s and into the 60s, and we did emblems, patches, because you couldn't embroider directly on a garment in those days, on those looms, unless you did yard goods. So this is some of the work that we actually did. These patterns were from the 1950s, and they are truly amazing. I will never be a good enough digitizer as the gentleman that trained me when I was a young man. And this is, I guess, going back into our family history. We did have 2 factories. This was the original factory back in the 50s. That's my grandmother there in the red dress, and my great-grandmother who worked in the factory. And when we grew or outgrew that factory, we had 4 Shifley looms, so 4 big 10-yard machines in there. We actually had a farmhouse in the front of the factory where we would live, and we ate and slept in the house, and we worked in the factory. And that was my life when I was a kid growing up. We were just a hard-working family. And I remember at 12, my first job was actually right on this machine here, that exact same machine that my grandfather's working on. That's called a clicker, and you used to punch out emblems. You have all the emblems on the loom. That's my mother when she was a young girl, working on the looms. That's my great-grandmother doing mending on a mending machine. But this is all the things that I remember as a kid growing up. So from the time I was 4 years old, I was in the factory being a little pest. When I turned into an adolescent, I worked in the factory and I did almost every job you can imagine until I finished high school. And then my grandfather told me what I was going to do for the rest of my life, because I was born with a purpose in his mind. The purpose was I was going to be a puncher. And the reason why is because nobody in the family knew how to digitize. We actually had other people who did that for us. So that's sort of where our whole legacy began. In the 70s, we did all kinds of emblems, and that was the main core of our business. And as we outgrew that original factory, we did end up into the 80s having 2 factories, 54 employees, 5 Shifley machines, 136 multi-heads, and we did an average of 10 million pieces of embroidery a year for almost a decade. So we were high volume embroiderers and manufacturers, yard goods, all that kind of stuff. That industry, unfortunately, has evolved. It's moved offshore for the most part. And now the runs that we do domestically are usually a lot smaller, and we send those larger runs out. But I remember those days, when we actually did that type of work. This is actually in our factory when I was a kid. This is actually in the 70s. And that was my grandparents' original factory. I love this picture right here because that beautiful lady sitting right at the end, that is my great-grandmother. And she used to work in the factory on the production line, packaging emblems. You can see them cutting out emblems and packaging them. And it just was a whole different world compared to what we have now. Now, this is really where I kind of came in. And when I did turn 17, so I've been digitizing for 37 years now, but when I was 17, the first 2 years of my career were actually on this machine right here. The exact machine that my Uncle Al was sitting on punching back in the 50s was the first 2 years where I learned how to mechanically create designs. And I'll be honest with you, it was incredibly stressful because, as I mentioned, if you made one single error, you didn't throw out one piece of embroidery, you threw out hundreds of pieces of embroidery. And as the machines evolved, this is a punching machine or a pantograph into the 70s, we actually worked on newer pantographs, and we created something called jacquard paper tape. And this is kind of the interesting thing, because that original photo that I showed you with the man sitting on the edge of the machine right here, that was a pantograph, which means that you were literally digitizing every design for each run manually. If you had to do 5 runs, you had to punch that design 5 times in a row. Well, when we went forward in time, they had a pantograph that created what was called jacquard paper tape. And some of you might recognize this from the old player pianos. The keys would automatically move by themselves. It's kind of neat because a Shifley machine was almost kind of like one of the first computers in a way. It worked on binary code, X's and Y's. It had movement going from one direction to the other. It had commands that would tell the machine to move, slow speed, fast speed, needles in, needles out, borers in, borers out. All these commands were written into paper tape, and that was amazing because this pantograph right here, it had something called an automat, and you would load your paper tape onto the side of the machine, and then you could literally do 1,000,000 pieces of embroidery because you just rewound the tape and you continue to do a span up on that loom and continue to create it over and over again. Now, the other really cool thing is you could actually edit your designs. You could take that paper tape and learn to read paper tape. And I do remember doing that the first few years of my career. And if you made a mistake, you didn't have to throw everything out. You would actually end up cutting and splicing the paper tape, putting it back together, and then you prayed to the embroidery gods that all the holes lined up properly and it would actually embroider out well. So the whole idea of seeing an image being created on a computer screen didn't happen for a long time. And I like to let people know that when we first started doing punching in those early days, it was manually, one stitch at a time. And then we evolved to jacquard paper tape, and then we evolved to things like this. And this was the first computerized system that I ever got in our factory. Luckily, I was the youngest puncher in our group, and after spending 2 agonizing years punching one stitch at a time on a pantograph, I learned how to digitize on what was called a Digitrack. And this was made by a company called Melco, and they are still around. They make the Amaya and the Bravo machines, but they've been around forever and a day. And we were actually able to put a board-based system, and on that board-based system, you can see that there is a cursor with a little crosshair, and then there was a little keypad where you could actually put in functions. And this was a modern-day miracle, because for the first time ever, you could put a point 1, 2, 3, and 4, and it would automatically fill in the stitches. James, do you see my picture on there as well, or just the slide? Maybe Eve, if you could get my picture in there as well, that might be a little better, because I'm showing things what I'm doing, and I don't think people are seeing it. But anyways, you could actually do 4 points, and it would fill it in with actual stitches. And that was really cool. We had to draw all of our angles in by hand on big paper drafts, but this is really when the digital age first came in, and I was about 19 years old when this happened. Now, as things progressed, I remember I got my first digitizing system, and I got to be honest, when I saw stitches appear on a computer screen, it was like the skies opened up, the angels started to sing, and a big warm light shone down from the heavens, because in the old days, we were actually punching or digitizing blind. You were looking at a paper draft and you weren't seeing really the results on the machine. But when you had a board-based system, and this is going back to the early 80s, you actually were able to see on a DOS computer, and you look here, there's a 5¼ inch floppy disk. So we are talking, before 3½. But this was the turning point when we were able to see our designs appear on the screen. Now, I will let you know, my first Wacom system that I purchased back in the 80s, it was a little bit pricey. And probably, you might actually find that a lot of software for digitizing these days might cost, $500 to $1,000 to $2,000 for reputable brands. Well, I actually paid in that day $64,000 US for my first digitizing system. So that's how much it was. So when people come to me and they kind of complain about the price of software, I have some empathy, but I don't have a lot of sympathy, because I paid like 64 times the amount that you might have paid back in those days. Now, this is where the industry also changed to running multi-head and multi-needle equipment. And these were the types of machines that we actually had running in our factory. And the whole key is with punching a design is designs should be production friendly. They should run well. They should actually sound like a kitten purring on your machine. All of your outlines should line up perfectly. You shouldn't have unnecessary trims and jumps. It should be, whether you're running it on a single needle, small brother machine, or whether you're running it on a big fancy, ZSK machine with 18 needles, the design that you feed that machine is the important part. You put garbage in, you get garbage out. You put good designs or good food in, you get good results and beautiful embroidery back out. So this is really why I feel that our education and our designs are, kind of at the top level of quality in the industry, because we had to run our designs for production. They had to run well on a 24 head machine just as well as they would on a single head. And I will also mention, in the old days, we did not use polyester thread. All our machines ran on rayon thread because polyester wasn't invented. And if you've run rayon thread, you know that it breaks very easily. And if you run polyester, you know that you can create the most bulletproof designs in the world, and you'll more than likely break a needle before you break a thread. So there's a little bit of a difference in how the industry evolved as well. Now, this is going into probably about 1994, 95. And I'm not going to tell, a big long story about my career, but I wanted to let you guys see the progression of digitizing and how it has actually changed to what you see today. And this was actually in the mid-90s, and these were all of the punching stations, the digitizing boards that I had in my company. I had a company called Punch Perfect, and we digitized globally for over 500 companies across the world back in the 90s, okay? And we still did all of our drafts on oversized plotters. We had big roll-in plotters. We did our, we didn't draw the designs by hand anymore, but we did them on Illustrator or Corel Draw. We'd put it on the board, and then we would be a board-based puncher. I did not switch to a on-screen system until this technology came out, which did come out about 15 years ago or so, maybe even a little more now. I do digitize with PC pen tablet technology. I am not personally a big fan of using a mouse alone to digitize, because I always tell people digitizing with a mouse is kind of like digitizing with a brick in your hand. If you are an artist, you usually draw with a pen. So that's sort of where things change. Now, so that gives you a little bit of background. I'll show you a couple more slides, and then I'll kind of be done. I'll do a little demo, and we'll open up for some questions. Here is where my industry did change. Unfortunately, all of our big machines went offshore, and then our digitizing company ended up going offshore as well. And 25 years ago, I actually started to educate in the commercial industry. And I taught at the ISS shows and the DAC shows and the NNEP shows, and I wrote for numerous trade publications in the commercial industry for about 7 or 8 years. I won 30 awards for digitizing commercially, and then I went into the home industry, and for the last 15 years, I did teach home embroiderers how to use their software. And I will let you know that our Digitizers Dream course, because I am kind of showing you the Hatch software, but we do have education for 10 of the most popular brands, because if you figure, I learned how to digitize one stitch at a time, you can give me any software and I'll show you or teach you how to create good designs with that software. Are some programs better than others? Yeah, kind of, but we'll get to that hopefully later on in the question and answer as well. So anyways, we do beautiful designs. We have our design membership. We have our Digitizers Dream course. And if you do want to, try the Hatch software and try it for free, because they have a 30-day trial, as well as try our challenge, we have that available as well. So there's lots of really cool things that we actually have that we can use. Now that should hopefully be, am I off screen now, James? Okay, hold on. I just have to figure out my technology. Yay, I'm back. Okay, so anyways, I just wanted to be sure that I let you know that you do not have to own any one certain brand of software to learn how to digitize. There is a little bit of a difference in software programs. Some, in my opinion, are written a little bit better than others. But if you have, let's say, the Dime software or PE or Palette or Stitch Artist or the Janome software, the Bernina software, I have done interactive lessons for all of those, because I have found that the best way to learn how to do anything is to actually learn by seeing and doing. If you're able to see somebody create something in the software that you currently own and you can follow along, that is the way you're going to get the best results. And that's really what we try to do, is we try to give people, I guess, some of the basic foundational theory that applies to every single program. And Eve did mention that we have a Digitizers cheat sheet that she's going to put a link up to. And even if you have no desire to become a digitizer, I still think that you should go to that link and download that Digitizers cheat sheet, because understanding some of the foundational things like, push and pull compensation and underlay and density and all of this terminology that is new when you come into this industry, if you understand why and how it works, then that will make you a better embroiderer, because odds are you might actually download a design that doesn't run well on your machine. And then if you have software, and it doesn't have to be digitizing software, if you have software, you might want to try to go in and edit or fix that design. And that's also something where I tell people I feel much better personally if somebody tries a program first without spending any money and takes a little bit of education, even if it's free education, to see if it's something that they're interested in, because there's really no use buying a full-blown digitizing software package in any brand if you decide that you don't want to digitize. You don't need that. You might just need a program that allows you to edit designs, or you might just want something that allows you to do layout and lettering. So it really is best to make an educated decision when it comes to actually choosing the software and the education that you want to, kind of have to go with it. So I think that kind of covers a little bit of my basic theory. It's kind of strange because most of my career for the last 25 years, I really did cover, I guess, my grandparents starting the business, and I covered the first 13 years of my career in that little presentation. And to be honest, I think that was the most important time of my life. It was kind of the worst time, the most boring time. It was the years where I probably clocked 20,000 hours of mechanically digitizing designs, and a lot of them one stitch at a time. So was it boring? Yes, it was, but I was blessed because I was given a gift of theory, of a foundation by people who spent decades learning their trade. And that's kind of why I'm passionate. I am very passionate about embroidery and digitizing, and I feel that part of my responsibility is to pass that along so that other people can have success and not have all of those stumbling blocks, which if you've tried to learn how to digitize on your own, you'll know that it can be a little bit frustrating, and you might actually create some new words while you're in the process. So anyways, Eve, are you there? Am I here? I don't want to, I don't know if I've covered everything.
You have, were
Okay.
you able, now with the demonstration of doing a quick stitch out, or did you change your mind? Because I
No,
know
no, I
that's
did.
like
I did
last
not.
second.
Yeah, yeah. No, no, I did not change my mind at all. I actually thought I was going to do something totally, totally different. And my son James is actually here with me, and I told him about this idea. I guess we talked yesterday, wasn't it? Okay, so or was it Friday? Anyways, it was a couple days ago. Eve and I talked, and we mentioned doing this, and I had a wonderful idea. And I said to James, I'm going to digitize something freehand. No artwork, no nothing. I'm just going to bring the screen up and I'm going to do something just totally, by scratch. And he said to me, Dad, that sounds like a pretty dumb idea. No, he didn't say. so, so we're gonna cross our fingers and we're gonna see if this works, because I am gonna digitize something freehand. And the point of this is to show you that you don't need to be an artist to be a digitizer. Because I think that is something else that a lot of people get held up with, is they think, well, I'm not an artist, I can't be a digitizer. Well, I'm really not an artist, and you're going to see that in a couple minutes. But it's all about having the theory, the foundation, knowing the tools and the software. And then when you bring in artwork, if you're not an artist, you can bring in some, I guess, artwork that you have legally acquired, of course. But you are using that as a background or a template, which you then put stitches onto it. So that's part of the creative process. For those of you who are artistic, I'm really jealous because that's not me. So, but would you agree, Eve, that having the software as a foundation, you don't have to necessarily be a hardcore artist to make it work?
You don't. And the cool thing is, uh, like you mentioned, if you have artwork as a basis, kind of like a coloring book, you just follow the lines, and that does make it a lot easier. You guys, if you want to see a stitch out demonstration, throw some purple bells or purple hearts up there so that he can get that encouragement and that push because we know it's going to work.
Okay. Well, actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to digitize this live, and then what I'll do
Okay.
maybe is I'm going to take the file and I will save it and I'll reformat it to all of the flavors, and then I'll send it back to you probably on Monday or Tuesday. And
Okay,
I'll make
cool.
sure I proof it first, but you can put it up wherever you want and say, here's the design, and people can make fun of
Awesome.
me and tell me how terrible it is. So,
We'll post
okay.
it.
Awesome. Actually, I before we go to that real quick, I just want to show you, because I did pull these out of my closet. I showed you the slideshow of that original Digitrack that I had, and this was actually my original piece that I saved from that Digitrack back when I was 19 years old. And this one here is actually that 4-button cursor from our old board-based systems. So I've been at this for a long, long time. Here, these are two of my prized possessions. Oh, hold on a sec. It just fell down. These are actually original Shifley spools. These are probably about 40 or 50 years old now, but these are Shifley rayon spools that we used to run on the Shifley looms as well. So kind of cool. And actually these I'll show you because I remember I told you that we made emblems back in the old days. My grandfather, who was an incredible salesperson, he actually did in the 1970s acquire a license with someone you might know, Walt Disney World. We did Mickey and Minnie and the Mad Hatter and all of the characters for Disney. So it's kind of cool to think that, you know, my grandfather really started this business with blood, sweat, and tears. And now I'm blessed enough that my kids are involved as well. So I'm going to share my hatch. Okay, James, you might have to come over here because I do not see my software. Yeah. Oh, I don't hear you, Eve. I think you're muted.
Oh, thanks. Sorry.
Can you come in here?
I
No
keep
problem.
myself muted all the time. So thank you guys for hanging in with us
Hello,
and
everyone.
watching this. And like I said, we'll have the questions coming as soon as we're done with our digitizing. So keep hang on to your questions. Don't think we're not going to get to you. And captains, I did send you out an email, so definitely be on the look for that.
Awesome. Okay, and here we are now. This is kind of cool. I have the software loaded. Just have to, and this is where having my kids come into the industry is awesome because I got to be honest, I'm feeling a little bit challenged with regards to technology. So the young blood comes in and makes it all work. Hold on. Okay. Move my water. Step number one, always move your water out of the way whenever you are working on your computer. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to my digitizing tools. I'm going to go to a freehand shape. I'm going to go to a 6:1 scale. I'm going to zoom in 6 times larger. If you do decide to take any of our education, even if it's free, you'll know that the 6:1 thing is the foundational rule that was created like 150 years ago. So I did not invent that. It's something that was done way before me. And I'm just going to come here and start digitizing some cool little lines. And let's just go over here. Okay, now it might look like I'm just squiggling on the page, and that is in essence exactly what I'm doing. But the difference is I have been squiggling this way for 37 years, so I'm pretty confident with the results, and I know that it's going to give me something that's kind of going to look half decent when it's done. So I'll just create one more little piece over here, and I'll just stop right there. Now I'm going to take another color, do something a little bit darker, put a little bit of blending in here. This is the cool thing, we're just blending with thread, filling in some of the gaps where I see them. So there's that color. Now I'll come in here and I'll just do something kind of cool this way, come over this way. And I'll grab another color, and let's just go here, and we'll just fill in some of the blanks. Now I could create as many different pieces as I want, but I'll just stop right there. Now I'll move to another color, and this one I'm just going to take a little bit more time, and I'll just come here and I'll outline these objects. This one I'm going a little bit slower with because I want to make sure. And this is all just freehand. I don't necessarily have to have 2 passes. 2 passes usually is red work, which means there should be exactly 2 passes. This really is kind of a freehand motion, and I'm just going along and filling in the blanks. And actually that looks pretty cool. So here's the deal. I've just created a little flower. I have no idea what type of flower that is, if it even exists on God's green earth, but it does kind of look like a flower. But keep in mind, I am zoomed in 6 times larger than the original design. That means that this flower in reality is about that big. Okay. Now what I can do with that, and this is what I love in the software, I still have my drawing tool on, so we'll get rid of that, is I'm going to take that one little flower and I'm going to grab it and duplicate it. And then I can take that flower and I can mess with it however I want, because it's kind of object based. And I can, flip it over this way a little bit. And let's just grab it and do one down here. And then I can take that flower and I can duplicate it. And I can put another one over here. And this one, I'll kind of, move this way a little bit. So I just turn it. Actually, let's grab this. I don't want to grab just the one color. I want to make sure I grab all the colors. So let's grab all of these. And let's turn this ever so slightly, just so it's off skew. And I'll make it a little bit smaller as well, just in one direction. And let's duplicate that one. And I'll just duplicate it one more time. And let's take this one and turn it a little bit, like 45 degrees in that angle. And take this one here. Make it a little bit bigger, rotate it a little bit more, and have it sit there, something like that. So there, I have very, very quickly created one object, but I've created 4 different pieces, and then you can kind of have fun. I mean, this is where the software is really cool, because you can come in here now, and I can say, well, everything's selected. I'm going to actually do either a mirror horizontally, or I can do a copy array or a reflection. I can take this and I can reflect all these pieces. So I could do something like this. And if I wanted to create a monogram, I could literally have all of these pieces and then put a monogram right in the center with some lettering. Now, the only downside with this, and let's take a look at what size it is. This is 220. Okay, 3 by 140. So this would fit into a 200 by 300 frame. It's going to be, pretty big, but it's only, I guess, well, it's 27,000 stitches. So we're talking about a frame like this big with 27,000 stitches. It's not going to be hard in any way. The only downside, if I look at this, though, is the amount of, I guess, colors that are here. Because if I go to the slow redraw, it's going to actually show me that there is a ton of color changes. And I can see them here. It's going to do all of these little pieces and then do them all like this and keep going on. And there's just way too many color changes. And I know that I don't want to have that many changes. So I can come here and go to Customize Design and do an Optimize Color Change. And now it's saying I'm going to take 19 colors and I'm going to bring it down to 4. And if I click OK, now in my sequence view, there's only the original 4 colors. And I'm really not too concerned about this lining up perfectly, because this does look like a hand-rendered, hand-done. I mean, you saw me. There really wasn't much talent there as far as creating this design, but this will kind of have a very hand-done look. And if you want to put it on, whatever, a bag or whatever it's going to be, I think it'll look kind of cool. But the proof will be in the stitching. And that's always my tagline, is anything can look good on screen, but the proof is always in the stitching. So here, if I come into the software now, I'm going to grab a font, and I'm going to just grab a Flexi Fill. We didn't really mention this, but we actually have, I think, 800 different fonts that are within our software program. I have digitized a whole bunch of fonts, and I'm just going to put a J inside of there. So if I'm going to personalize this, and let's insert the character, and go right here. Actually, let's do the L, because it's going to look a little bit nicer. Click OK. So there is my L. And let's just make this really big like this. Now, here's the cool part. I can take this one piece here, put it on that, and if you look at it, it actually is within my objects. It should be at the very, very bottom of my list. So there it is right there. Now I'm going to make sure that I break this apart so that it is completely broken apart, and then I'm going to actually duplicate it. So now I'll have 2 different objects. I'll make this one a different color, and this one I'm going to actually go to an outline, tell it to be a backstitch with 5 passes of thread, and then I'll come to the center color. Let's make this a darker green. Maybe we'll choose this green right here. And I'm going to take that and I'm going to actually turn it into a tatami fill with a very loose fill, so 1.2 millimeters, travel on edge border. And now I have a very rustic looking fill. We'll take all the underlay out of that. Now I know that I went pretty quickly, and actually I need to change this color just so we can see it a little bit better. I went pretty quickly, but for the most part here, and oops, I have a couple more pieces, grab those as well. I have a monogrammed piece that actually has a very loose trapunto fill with a jagged edge 5-pass fill around the outside, and then it actually has all of these jagged flowers. So I guess, is there a way to get thumbs up or hearts? I don't know, we're streaming, I guess that's on Facebook. But anyways, if you thought that was kind of cool, that was a makeshift design that was done really, really quickly. And I will actually make sure that I save that out and get it to you, Eve, so that we can see it.
Awesome sauce. That was funny
Awesome.
when you were in the Wacom hatch. I was gonna say, oh, the ESA fonts mentioned that too.
Yeah, the ESA fonts, the Wacom software has something called ESA fonts, which are object-based fonts. They're called, I guess, embroidery-specific alphabets, and they are not fonts that are stitch files like other fonts that you find in most other programs. These can be used, resized, you can change stitch types, you can do anything you want to them, and it does come preloaded in the software with fonts from Hatch, but we actually did create over 800 fonts that you can load into the software that are optional. And I did create ESA fonts almost 20 plus years ago commercially because I was tired of digitizing the letter A 500 times a day when we were doing commercial punching. So knowing that I had that, I guess, knowledge of how to create fonts for the Wacom platform, when we were blessed with being a Hatch reseller, I got right to work and I literally have created 800 fonts for the software, which is pretty crazy. I was dreaming about fonts for months. So
The fonts are really cool because the thing that I loved about using the ESA fonts that he digitized in Wacom Hatch, he has, when you go to purchase the font, it tells you the maximum size. Am I remembering correctly? The maximum
actually,
size and
it tells you the
minimum?
minimum. Yeah, the
Minimum
minimum.
size.
Yeah.
Minimum size. So you can resize it by just resizing it in the software program as opposed to what we're used to, which is going and purchasing a font and you have to purchase different sizes. You know what I'm saying? And then
Yeah.
you got to figure out which size. So I love that part of Wacom Hatch and the
For,
ESA font. So that was awesome. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Well, for sure, because I mean, most fonts, they are actually stitch files that have been assigned a keystroke. So you're taking expanded data, and there is a little bit of margin of error, so to speak, where you can make it a bit smaller or a bit bigger before it starts to distort. But when you're talking about ESA files, it's the original nodes within the actual font. So even if you bring up one of the fonts that I did and you don't like the way I digitize the L, you say, you know, John, you did a terrible job. You can actually go into the original nodes and you can change them or add nodes or do whatever you want. So it really is cool. Just takes your creativity to a whole new level.
Yeah, Wacom Hatch is an awesome program and it allows you to use stitches, each individual stitch and stitch points to do your digitizing. As you saw in his demonstration, he's laying stitch by stitch. Now, of course, there's several different ways it can be done. And
Yes.
Wacom Hatch does offer auto digitizing as well. But
Yes.
at the end of the day, try it. I mean, there's a 30-day trial. You can't go wrong for 30 days. And then he offers the cheat sheet, which I'm going to go ahead and post here in the chat in a
Awesome.
moment. And he also has courses that you can sign up to the Legacy Club and take those at your leisure. The videos and everything is there. I mean, and even if you get the software and you choose not to digitize and maybe sell your designs, you at least have peace of mind that you can digitize your own ideas. And that's what sold me on getting into digitizing because I was like, oh man, this would be a cool design or that would be a cool design. And nobody had anything that I could take part of that and take part of that to make
Mm.
my own design. You kind of don't want to do that anyway, but that's what got me into doing digitizing. So
Well, for
I'm
sure.
super excited with this.
I know a lot of digitizers in the commercial industry. Wacom actually has been the number one software developer for, I guess, 30 plus years. They've been around for 40 years, but they are number one. And the reason why is because of that object-based technology. Hatch has only been around, I think, 3 years now, so it's relatively new, but it is a true Wacom product. So all of the stuff that's in the commercial level is actually almost identical in the Hatch software. And the
Wow.
real beauty, I tell people, is the stuff you see happening or the stuff you don't see happening is actually the really important things, because they have, I guess, in their stitch processor, algorithms for creating incremental density and to reduce short stitches. So I know that a lot of digitizers who have used other programs for years, they'll create a design and then they'll try it in Wacom or Hatch, and they'll do the exact same design, and they'll run it on a machine and they'll say, I don't know why, but it just seems to run better. And I'll tell them, well, it's because Wacom has almost like an autopilot. It actually takes all of the mistakes that we make, and I make them too. I'm by no means am I perfect. I go really, really fast, but if I have too many stitch penetrations close together, Wacom will automatically see those and literally knock them out when you save your file. So it's like having a safety net with you when you're actually creating stuff.
Right. That's really cool.
Yeah,
Now, I did see one question that I am going to address only because
sure.
you're missing the whole point of the show. But someone is like, I still don't understand what digitizing is. So
Okay.
if you're doing embroidery, you know what? Would you like to answer that, professional?
Sure.
Let's let the expert answer
Well,
that.
digitizing in a nutshell is taking a piece of artwork, whether you've created or somebody else has, and you are assigning stitches to it. The process of assigning or choosing which stitch type, because there's a running stitch, a satin stitch, and a fill stitch, that you get to choose. You get to choose the type of underlay, because any embroidery should have a foundation under the stitches that you see if you want it to sew out nicely on your machine. And you have to learn how to control the pathing, meaning how your machine is going to sew all of these sequences of colors and objects together so that they actually give you good results. And you had mentioned, Eve, auto digitizing, which I do agree. There is a place for auto digitizing. That is when the software sees artwork and it mathematically puts stitches where they think it should go. And some software does it better than others, but none of them that I've seen so far really do it as well as somebody who actually has been trained to do it using their noggin instead of a magical button. So
That
I
is
don't know if
very
you'd agree.
correct.
Yeah, I always tell people, sometimes when you press that magical button, instead of voila, you get voila. It just it doesn't sew out very
Right?
well. And
No, it
the other,
doesn't.
yeah, and I've seen some designs, because we do, I'm sure you've seen this as well. You get customers who send you something that they've created, and you have to be as sensitive as possible because you know that they've put, their heart into this. But you look at the design, you open it up, and there's like 496 trim stitches, and they're saying, how come this is not running well on the machine? Because you got to remember that if a design has a jump or a trim, the process is the machine literally stitches and then it has to tie out, because if it doesn't tie out, the thread will pull, right? And then it has to stop, go over and tie in. And you're literally creating like 8 or 9 penetrations between the tie in and the tie out, which create all those tails on the bottom of your embroidery. And that's where we get the term bulletproof embroidery. I mean, it's stiff, it's hard, and it doesn't sew well on your machine. So there's a difference between a design that is done properly and one that is not. So
Which is why I fully, wholeheartedly beg you, if you want to learn digitizing, please take his classes. I mean, even
okay.
if you don't purchase the software, at least that basic knowledge, as he mentioned earlier, if you purchase a design from someone else who has already digitized it, you can tell yourself if it's, I don't want to say a good design or a bad design, but you
Mm.
can make the necessary adjustments yourself to say, okay, this has entirely too many underlay stitches. Let me take some of this out. And it
Yeah,
also helps you where if you get a design that's heavy stitching, that would probably be better for denim, but you're trying to put it on a t-shirt, then you'll know how to adjust the stitches and take out some of those stitches to make it lighter and better for the fabric that you're using as well
for
without
sure.
having to have them redigitize it.
Which, if I can do a little Wacom plug, that's one of the other big things that Wacom commercially was known for years. And the reason why 90% of the commercial world used Wacom is because they, for probably the last 20 years, have had something called Fabric Assist, which means
Mm.
that if I was a production-based puncher selling my designs to a company in Iceland, I would send them the EMB file. Now, the company in Iceland, they were not digitizers. They didn't want to digitize because they had me doing the designs for them. But the reason why I gave them the EMB file, which is Native's native language, it's sort of like a PES file, but it actually can't be read by any embroidery machine on the face of the earth. The only thing that can read an EMB file is actually Wacom. But the company in Iceland actually had a lower version of the software, not to digitize, but just to go in and change colors, sort colors, do a little bit of editing or add lettering. They might be doing names on, babies' booties, just whatever that they're actually doing. And they would take my file, which I digitize with my recipes, and at a click of a button, they could change that file from pure cotton to corduroy to leather to lycra to you know uh, terry cloth to stretchy terry cloth, and the software automatically adjusts the underlay, the densities, and everything about the design so that it will automatically run better specifically on that fabric. And that's the beauty of digitizing. I've been doing this for 37 years, and now I don't do too many little cute teddy bears anymore. It's not. I get a little bored because I have like 900 teddy bears. Choose one of those. If I'm gonna if I'm gonna digitize now, I'm actually doing more creative stuff. Like some of the pictures behind me, I do more artistic stuff because even after 37 years, I'm not bored of the process because every design is different. It really is kind of one of those fascinating jobs where you can keep yourself mentally alert and thinking constantly because it's never the same twice.
And the cool thing too is even if you um, aren't into necessarily digitizing designs, there's so many other avenues you can digitize that aren't necessarily designs, like in the hoop. You can
Oh yeah,
digitize in the hoop, you can digitize freestanding lace. I mean,
yes.
the sky's the limit. The thing is, what do you want to get into? What is your area of interest?
Yeah, and
And
that's been my fun part lately. We've been doing some little, I guess we've been doing some webinars and some parties and stuff, and doing theme related stuff. And now that I'm not traveling the way I used to, because I used to be on the road a lot, I'm actually at home and I'm like a mad scientist in my studio here, and I'm digitizing all kinds of designs and doing more in the hoop projects, doing stuff with mylar on it because the mylar is nice and sparkly. We just came out with a whole line of simulated marrow stitches, marrow borders, because in the emblem industry, they have a very distinct border done by what's called a marrow machine. And I've pretty much perfected that with a regular home machine. Hopefully you can kind of see if the camera can pick this up. There we go. So that
mhm,
is actually a simulated marrow stitch, but it's done on a
mhm.
regular embroidery machine. So I've just been having so much fun playing, and it isn't all difficult designs. It's just new creative processes. We actually are doing some stuff for St. Patrick's Day right now, which I'm excited about because I'm doing all kinds of mylar and in the hoop things that I've never tried before. And this is 37 years later, so it's all about having fun.
Yes, awesome sauce. So we have a couple of folks that are waiting in the wings to join in again. Someone asked about how to sign up for the classes or will come. The links to his website is in the description box below, so please check that out when you have an opportunity. I know Miss Carol Coleman was waiting to ask a question as I mentioned to you, so she'll be joining us here in a moment. Then
Awesome.
we also have our captain. So if you're a captain here on the Hoop group and you would like to join in, check your email. There is a link there. You can click that and come right in on the show, and we'll get you on camera. But one of the questions, really quick, that again goes into the Willcom, they're asking how much is it, and are payments available on your website as well? I know the main site
Yep.
has payment options.
Yes, yeah. Actually, just so you know, we are an official Wilcom Hatch reseller. So Wilcom Hatch is their own company. In my opinion, it's the most affordable program in its level. And there are less expensive and equally, they're good programs, but there are less expensive programs available. But Wilcom decided not to sell through a dealer network, meaning that it's not going to a retailer through a retailer, which meant that they could actually keep the cost of the program down. There's only, I think, 4 or 5 other official resellers in the entire world besides us. And it's one of those things, I don't know if you've had this, Eve, I'm guessing you have, but there's been a few times in my life where I really feel like God has blessed me and that I didn't go looking for something, it actually came to
Right,
me. And
right,
when those types of things happen in your life, which is, Wilcom came to me and asked me if I would like to be a Hatch reseller, it was an instant yes, because I've been a customer for decades and I love their software and I know it like the back of my hand. So it was a perfect fit. And when you do purchase through us as an official reseller, the only difference is you need to start the journey at our site, so at the Digitizing Made Easy site. And then we are tracked as your reseller, and you purchase the software through Hatch. You don't buy it from me. We are just a reseller. But the cool thing is, if you do choose us as your reseller, if you want to download the trial, do it through our website, we do include free gifts because it's
hmm
the same price. Normally, it's on sale for $1,099 for the Digitizer. If you know you don't want to digitize and you just want the Composer, which is the editing level, that is less expensive. And there's a lettering and layout level, which is even less expensive. So you can choose the software you want that meets your needs, but the price is always the same everywhere in the world. There's no, kind of people underselling other people.
right,
The beautiful part of it for us is if you do buy through our reseller link, I will include free education, free Esa fonts, and a bunch of other goodies that aren't found anywhere else, and you'll get the exact same price. So it's you said free was a wonderful word. I think it's a magical word because everybody loves free.
yes,
So
we do.
and so that's the thing. Now, I think I missed one question though. How much was it? And so,
Oh, yeah.
the payment plan. Wilcom does have something called FlexPay, where what they've done is they have taken the amount and they've broken it up into 12 equal payments. I think it might work out to a little bit more money, but it is
Right,
a payment plan and it's
right,
not a dongle based. So if you stop paying for it, they'll shut your program down, so to speak. So
right,
but if you pay out all 12 payments, then it's licensed to you, and you actually are able to load it on 3 separate computers within the same license. So you can have it running on 3 separate computers all at the same time, and it'll work just fine.
right. So definitely check out his link, because I know for a fact I got my free fonts when I signed
Yay!
up. How many years ago was that now? So yes, definitely check them out. So we're going to go ahead and jump in on the questions, so that we can hear from you all. And again, if you are a Hoop Group member here on YouTube, you have that special question mark link that'll make your questions stand out. So we
Yay!
definitely can grab yours. But we have Miss Carol Coleman. She's going to join us first to ask her question. So let me grab her. Well, hey, Miss Coleman,
Okay.
how are you?
Oh,
I'm doing fine. How are you? Hi, John.
hello. How are you?
You know I'm still in love with you.
I know you well. I
You
wish I could give
promised
you.
me you would behave.
Here's a
I'm be-
virtual hug.
Thank you. You know I'm behaving. I'm behaving because I'm not close to him.
I think we have a bit of a history, Carol. If you notice, I'm blushing.
I know, and you still. Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you that, Eve. I don't care what happened. He blushes. I love it.
That's funny.
How's
I
your
love it.
wife?
My wife is amazing. We've been together for a whole year, and she still loves me. Well, hold on. I should rephrase that. We've been together for like 30 something years, but this is
Okay,
the
I'm
first
gonna
time I've been.
clean it up,
Yeah,
John. Clean it
yeah,
up.
yeah,
Oh
yeah.
no. Okay, it's not really a question, but what I wanted to say when I came home from Costa Rica, see, I couldn't get him off in the woods nowhere. But when I came home from Costa Rica, uh, I tried to do the digitizing part again, like you told me about filling in more. But when I filled in more, it looked like I put too many stitches. How do you know when you put too much? Besides your machine jamming up on you.
Good question.
Remember the
Okay.
little palm tree?
Yeah, yeah, that all comes down to like the demonstration that I just did where I was making the flowers and I was spacing. If you were to
Right.
measure my spaces, the spacing between each row is about zero point 0.4 millimeters. And that
Okay.
really is, yeah, that's the space. So here's what you should do, and I actually do this in my new lessons in the Dream course. I tell people when they set up their software to go to 6:1 and set up a 1 millimeter grid. So you literally have a visual in front of you of what a millimeter looks like. Because if you want to get approximately 0.5 millimeter of space between each line of stitches, no more or no less, so that you have the perfect amount of coverage, that gives you a visual line that you can follow. Do you get what I mean?
Oh, okay. You're right,
Yeah.
right. I didn't think
Yeah, so
about that.
it's all about being consistent and that's why I'm such a stickler on digitizing at a set scale, because it's about being consistent and the rules of stitches are the same. They don't change. But if you don't see it in reality, you can put too little or too much and not know about it until you get it to the machine.
Yeah. And that's what happened to me. And so I kind of gave up a lot. And
Okay. Well, I'm gonna send you out those links, and I'm gonna I'm gonna give you some homework, Carol.
okay, like you did when I was in Costa Rica. Great job, great. But
Well, thank you for joining us tonight and for asking your question. I really appreciate it.
thank you,
Okay.
ma'am.
Would it be
She's scared I'm gonna
inappropriate?
be bad, huh?
No. I just wanted to say thank you, Carol, and I mean this in a very ethical way. I love you.
I love you too, and I don't. I mean it in an ethical way. I'll go with your
Okay.
words.
Okay.
But I love you and your family. So I had a wonderful time. We were there, and y'all were very gracious.
Oh, thank you.
We'll talk
Oh,
to you
that's
later,
awesome.
ma'am.
Okay, Eve.
You made
See,
yeah.
I told you I'd be good.
Yes, you did. Thank you. We're
that
gonna
that that
grab.
just that made my day. That was awesome.
I'm glad it did. We laughed about it when I talked to her the other day. But it's awesome, you guys, because at one point, I keep wanting to call them retreats, but he would have a digitizing retreat where you could go and stay for a couple of days and then learn digitizing while you're there. And she was able to take advantage of that. I had hoped to be able to do one, but of course, Corona took that away from me.
Yes.
So
Well,
hopefully it'll open back up at some point.
yes, God willing, the world will get some normalcy back. And we did do those retreats in Costa Rica, and they were a week long. So they were just fantastic because we got to have a couple days of hardcore learning, and then it was just all about having fun. So,
Yeah, that's really cool.
yeah.
So we have Miss Elise also that's going to join us. So I'm gonna bring her in. Hello, Miss Elise. How are you?
Hello, Elise.
It's so cool to be able to talk to everyone face to face. This is really neat.
Well, actually, you kind of answered some of the basis of my questions because it was about whole compensation and underlayment. So you
Hmm.
kind of addressed that, and I see that you need to take your classes. So in your classes, I thought you said you teach different software other than Hatch because I have other software. So you have
Yes.
classes available for other
Yeah.
software.
Yes, and on our site in the Digitizers Dream course, it does show the software that I do teach it in. Unfortunately, I mean, I couldn't possibly teach it in every brand because that would be way too much. I literally taught all 15 lessons. There's 3 different levels, 15 lessons, and I did them 10 times over and had to learn where the buttons were in 10 programs. And that's all my mind could fit. Anything else and it would explode. So, but yeah, it's all basic foundation. And to give you, I guess, an understanding of underlay, and this is one of my favorite examples, of push and pull compensation. Always think of pull compensation like you would a tube of toothpaste. When you squeeze toothpaste, your fingers are the directions of the stitches. When you squeeze toothpaste, the toothpaste always comes out the open end. And the same thing happens with stitches. When you squeeze them this direction, they push out the open ends on either side. And the good news is the amount of pull that happens is based on the width of the stitch. The longer the stitch, the more it pulls. But the push on either open end, that always stays stagnant or always stays the same. It never changes. It's a fixed value, and that's 0.4 millimeters on either side. So if you follow those foundational rules of digitizing at a set scale, it's actually pretty easy to allow or adjust for your push and pull compensation while you're digitizing, as opposed to guessing every time you run it on the machine.
Right.
Well, that was my question.
Awesome.
Well, thank
Yay.
you for asking your question. Awesome sauce. And
Thank you
for
so
joining.
Thank
much.
you. Thank you. Thank you. Pleasure meeting you.
So we're gonna go ahead and grab some questions. Want to make sure that you're. Is everything okay with uh, J- James?
Yes. Yeah, he was just saying that he wanted me to mention that I know you have blogs on your site, but we have a ton of blogs as well, I guess, that actually go into specifically underlay and pull compensation and on that type of stuff. So if anybody is interested in getting more detailed information, they can check out those as well. And they are absolutely free. We love that word.
Yes, definitely. So I'm going to scroll back into the chat because I saw several of the large question marks, and I want to make sure that I don't miss them. I believe that was Rhonda. Let's see. I have Rhonda the writer. She says, "Are your fonts the ones on sale in the Hatch software?"
No, they are not. There are fonts that are built into Hatch that come with the software, and then there are also fonts that are optional for sale. And they are actually encrypted. They're actually in the software, and they unlock when you purchase them through Hatch. The fonts that we have are actually ESA fonts that we've created that you download from our site, and we show you, depending on the I guess, software, whether it's the Genome, the commercial, or Hatch 1 or 2, because I wish they could make it easy and do it all in the same place, but you have to load the fonts into a specific file folder so that when you start up the program, they will appear. But yeah, we have, and I like to think that I was a little bit of an innovator when it came to fonts, because we not only have regular fonts, but we have applique fonts, 3D fonts, we have fonts for small lettering, we have flexi fills, we have elements. I've basically, we have quilting fonts. We've taken, monograms. We've taken fonts and kind of pushed them to a new level where they are actually designs that are assigned a letter. So we have tons and tons available.
Carmen Alvarado asked, "I met John Deere about 5 years ago in Temecula, I guess, California, at
Awesome.
Moore's. Bought a used Baby Lock 10 needle that has his signature on it. Thanks for all your help."
Well,
That's awesome.
I apologize for devaluing your equipment.
I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, some WD-40 and a rag, and you'll clean that up.
Hilarious. Tanyu asks, "I purchased the software at the Sewing Expo in Atlanta. Does it include the ESA fonts?"
Yes, if you got it from us, you should have gotten a package at the show where if you opened it up, we actually put the bonus code for the fonts that are in there. If for whatever reason, if you still have that package, which has your original serial number, if for whatever reason you never loaded it, give it a shot. They should work. If they don't, just call our toll-free number or put in a support ticket, and we will make sure that we get them updated for you. But yep, we always give away free fonts.
Awesome. Then we have Celia Models. John, can you post that design in your Facebook group too? I'm assuming the floral design that you made.
Yeah, actually, I'd almost feel better about posting it in your
Okay.
group, Eve. Yeah,
Okay.
I'll give it
No
to you.
worries.
If you want to get that design, you have to go visit Eve because she was nice enough to
Awesome.
honor me with being here. So I want you guys to go there to get it, if that's all right.
Thank you. That's fine. That's fine.
Awesome.
We're in the Hoop group on Facebook, so definitely look us up. We'd love to have you. Then we have Benny Main says, Eve, how long have you been using Hatch? I want to say I purchased it 2 years ago. It's been a while, so I'm not 100% sure. I know I didn't get it last year, so it was either 2 or 3 years ago. And I learned some of the basics, but I really didn't get into the classes. But that's going to change at some point. Well, now that we have so much downtime, I'll be able to get back into the classes and do that. So excited about doing that soon.
Yeah, and
Um,
the cool thing that we did do for anybody who does want to download the free trial, I did create, and this is one of our newest projects, a challenge. We call it the Digitizing Challenge. And all of the challenge lessons are on YouTube, and that means that they are free. Yay! But to get the files, the artwork to take the challenge, you just fill out our form and we send you the EMB files and the artwork files, all that good stuff. But I always tell people that buying software before you actually try it or before you find out if you really want to digitize, that's a little bit risky because everybody works very hard for their money. And if you spend, whether it's $500 or $1,000 on something you're not going to use, that's called buyer's remorse. And that's the last thing I want to happen with people. So I strongly suggest taking our free challenge, getting the free download. You have 30 days. And the beautiful part is I will show you within those 5 lessons how to create actual designs that you will run on your machine, and it will give you good results. And that will hopefully, motivate you to either say, yes, this is something I really want to pursue, or to be honest, you don't like clicking your mouse button. If you really hate clicking that mouse button, then digitizing probably isn't for you. Would you agree with me that, Ani?
yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Let's see. I also have, let's get back to where am I? Rhonda the writer says, questionnaire, your fonts. Oh, we already asked that question, sorry. And we answered how much the digitizing program was. Someone else asked, D. Patterson Business, how can I use previous fonts that I have?
Um, It depends on the type of font that it is. If it's a stitch file font, meaning that you bought it in a PES or DST or EXP format, those are stitch files. Those would have to be brought in one at a time into the software. I know that there are also BX fonts, which are specific to the Embrilliance platform, and it's a great idea because what they did is they took the stitch files and assigned keystrokes to them. They, for the most part, can't be edited as much as an ESA font because they are originally a stitch file. But if you have a big stockpile of BX fonts, then you would still use those and lay them out within your Embrilliance platform, and then you could always save them and bring them into Hatch to do your other layouts. So,
Awesome. Williams says, how do you digitize from a drawing? Can you auto digitize it? We kind of covered that a little bit, but the auto
yeah.
digitizing, he mentioned the program reads the picture and lays stitches down on top of it. And sometimes most instances, that's not the best.
Yeah, and if you want to really, I don't know if you've had a chance to check this out, Eve, but I did a series. It was a 3-part series on our YouTube channel that actually I went through auto digitizing, and I did 3 different types of auto digitizing, meaning that it was 3 different levels. It was there's usually a magical button that just does whatever it wants, and then there's one that you can kind of control. And then I took a really detailed piece of artwork and I let the software try to do it the best that it could. And then I did it manually and compared the results. So if you want a really accurate assessment of auto digitizing and when to use it, it's kind of funny because I always tell people, if you have a friend or a family member you really don't like that much, then auto digitizing is perfect. because it just, just kidding. Sorry.
The auto digitizing is a fail. What's that?
That wasn't nice, I know.
It's okay. We'll take it. Coffee Baldwin asks, if something is drawn already on paper, how can I make it digitized like a logo?
Actually, in my opinion, it's relatively easy. You're taking that image as a backdrop, so you can actually bring your artwork into the software. It's kind of, the backdrop that you see there. And then you just choose your tools, which could be a running stitch, a satin stitch, or a fill stitch. Learning which stitch type you use is actually some of those foundational rules, right? Like a fill stitch is meant to cover large areas. A satin
Mm-hmm.
stitch is for, mid-size areas that actually give you certain widths of stitch before you can, break the rules. And running stitches are usually for fine detail. So it's all about learning the foundation, having the artwork, and choosing. You get to choose the tools that you want to use to make it look great.
Right. And then, of course, getting it transferred over into the software program, you may have to scan it in or take a
Yeah.
picture with your cell phone. That works.
Yeah, that's usually the best way these days. The only thing I've found is I'm challenged with taking straight photos, but you want to make sure
Yeah.
you get them as straight as possible because they will skew a little bit
It
one way
takes
or
a
another.
steady hand or a
Yes,
teenager, I've learned.
there you go.
Inspiration Creation says, I have a Genome MBX digitizing program. It says powered by Wacom. If I
Yes,
take your classes, will it help me learn properly when using this program?
definitely 100% yes. We actually do have classes specifically for the Genome software.
Nice. Pearl Lucas says, is the software beginner friendly?
Yes, I most definitely. Let's put it this way: when I do teach classes, even if they are interactive, hands-on classes, because we did that for quite some time. Actually, this coming weekend, we're giving hands-on classes with the Sewing and Stitchery Expo out in Seattle. They're not able to do a live show this year, so they're doing it virtually. And I always try to give people lessons that will allow them to digitize a design with good results in the first hour or two that they sit down with the software. And
Wow.
that really is the key, because if you spend days trying to learn something, sew it out, and it looks terrible, you don't feel like doing anything with that other than putting it on the shelf and saying, that's not for me. So,
Right.
positive results. And, I always tell people I called my site Digitizing Made Easy. And actually, I did it because I wrote a book years ago called Digitizing Made Easy. But I didn't say, I said digitizing made easy. I didn't say digitizing is easy. There's a difference. There's
Right.
still a learning curve. You still have to apply yourself. Nobody gets good at anything after an hour or two. When you when you start, and I've been creeping you a little bit, Eve, and I've been seeing all the cool stuff that you're doing, and
Thank you.
sublimation, and I can learn stuff from you, but I'm guessing you didn't learn all that overnight.
No, no, definitely not. And usually, when I tell people if they want to get into digitizing with Wilcom and learn it professionally, I tell them it takes about 30 days. That 30-day trial period, I say give yourself at least that to get proficient enough to feel comfortable. That's my
Mm.
personal opinion, though.
Yeah, I think that you will be an expert at about 50 years in. So I still have 13 more
Wow.
years before. But to me, I actually, that's, to be honest, my biggest joy is, what other job could you do for 37 years and not be bored? You know what I
Right,
mean? It's just, it's
right.
creative. It's fun. It's creative. And I still run my machine, my studio. I have two, multi-needle machines over there. I digitize and run samples every single day. And I'm
Wow.
still excited about seeing the results. That's awesome.
That is cool.
If you do something you
Um,
love, it's not work.
That's true. That's
Yeah,
true. Carmen English says, where can I sign up for his classes? The links are in the description below.
awesome.
And your book you just showed, where can they purchase
That
the book
one,
if they're interested?
strangely enough, that this was actually, I think, released like almost 16 or 17 years ago now. It's still for sale, and it's on Amazon.
And
So
it's
if you
still
look
relevant.
under, Yeah, digitizing, and they've actually sold. I'm kind of amazed because my wife made me write this book. I told her it was the first year I came into the home industry, and I was at the Sewing and Stitchery Expo, and the publisher came up to me and asked me if I'd write a book. And that first year, I was exclusive with Baby Lock, Tacony
Mm.
Corporation, and I actually spent 264 nights in a hotel room that first year.
Wow.
And I said to the publisher, I'm really sorry, but I just can't do it. I'm too busy this year because it was actually February and they wanted it by the end of the year. And I said, I can't do that. I just have too many events. And I went home and told my wife that they asked me to write a book and I had to turn them down. And she read me the riot act. She said to me, you cannot do that. I don't care what you do. You have to do that. And so
Hilarious.
I wrote this book in 3 days in a hotel room right before Christmas time that year.
Wow.
And it sold like 43,000 copies so far, which is kind of cool.
Yeah,
So,
it is. It is. I own that as well. Um, so it doesn't look like it was written in 3 days. I'll tell you that. I'm shocked to know that. We also have another hoop group captain that would like to ask her question. Miss Avery Head is in here, so I'm gonna bring her on. Miss Head, how are you today?
I am great, and I want to thank you so much. Hello, John. How are you?
hello, I'm good. Hi,
Um,
Avery.
I just want to know, from start to finish, approximately how long, and I know this question has probably already been answered. How long does it take to really, because I'm new to this with the embroidery, Eve is such an awesome, everything I've learned from her. Thank you,
Mhm.
thank you, thank you, thank you. I
Yay,
appreciate it.
2 thumbs up.
I really do.
Thank you.
Words can't express it. So I just, and
Thank you.
I've got friends right now watching you. So
Awesome sauce. Hey, friends.
yeah. So John, what I'm saying, I think she said the link is there and we can get started. And you mentioned a flex pay, Eve.
hmm
Okay, all right. So we just go to your link and go from there.
in
Yep.
in the description, it's the
Right.
link to his website. Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much. And I
You're
finally got
welcome.
a chance to say hi to you, Eve.
I'm here, but you said that you wanted to know how long it'll take. What was your question?
Yes. I wanted to know, like, when I first get started, once I get the package or whatever, is it a self taught, or is there an instructor, or explain it to me?
Here's your instructor. The way we've done, I've always said for years and years, any software program is only as good as the education that is available for it. And I mean, YouTube has been a huge blessing for myself and everybody. But we do have, besides our free resource, if you do purchase the Hatch software, will include the first level of our Digitizers Dream course. And that is actually 5 interactive lessons that you do at your own time, at your own pace. In lesson number 1, there's actually 13 designs that you digitize from beginning to end. So it is detailed, and you will, after the 4 lessons, we'll have a certification lesson. My whole goal is that when people get through all 3 levels of our Digitizers Dream course, they are equipped to understand all 3 stitch types and to put them into practice. So that's something that I feel is important, that if somebody spends the money and has the desire to learn, then we do everything possible to give them the tools that they can do that.
Right, right. Okay, in the words of Eve, awesome sauce.
Yes, it is very awesome sauce.
Awesome sauce. I'm going to have to
Thank you,
remember that
ma'am,
one.
Thank
for
you so
coming
much.
on.
I
I
appreciate it.
appreciate
I appreciate
it. Yes, ma'am. Have a good night.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Pleasure meeting you.
The other question, which was a really good question, Joanna Holmes asked, "Does this software work with a Mac?"
With Bootcamp or Parallels, it is not written native for a Mac. We do in our, I guess we have Wacom Hatchfax Facebook group, and there is, I think, like 7,500-ish members there. So those are like 7,500 people that do own Hatch, and they come to our Facebook group as a resource if they have any questions. that's the best place to have them answered quickly. And I love it because one of our main moderators is actually in Australia. So I always tell people we have like 24-hour service. You know, I mean, just when we're sleeping,
Yeah,
somebody else is there to answer the questions.
right.
But that is a huge deal as far as having that, support.
Okay, cool beans. Miss Beckham asked John, I wasn't able to watch the class I missed. Is there a way to watch it now?
If she's talking about the Digitizers Dream course, those are all, they have no expiry on them. So they would be in your classroom and you can watch them over and over again. To get through all three levels in reality would probably take somebody at least 3 to 4 months to do it if
Okay,
they were actually really focused on doing it. The reality is most people have lives, jobs, and things that get in the way. Your summer, you could be traveling or you have kids getting married or, just anything can happen. So I didn't put a limitation on those lessons because I understand that sometimes people go away for 3 months and they want to come back and just refresh a little bit. But the
okay,
point is, I want them to finish if they feel inclined to. So there is no actual expiry on the Digitizers Dream course. We
okay,
have done other, I guess, webinars and stuff, which are more, I guess, they're interactive, they're live. And those ones we may have put a couple of weeks after the webinar ended. There might be a viewing time and then it expires. But usually our cost of the education reflects whether we are streaming it for life or just for a little while.
got you, got you.
Yep.
So if it is available, she can just log in
So you log
under
in.
her profile. Okay,
Yes, yeah. If you have purchased any of our education on our site, you will have a classroom, and in your classroom will be all of the education that you have purchased. A lot of people don't know this, and I'll mention this as well. In our level 1, so if anybody does get hatched through us and the level 1 does come included with the hatch purchase right now, this creative digitizing educational bundle, this is actually a bundle that I did probably 20, maybe 20 something years ago. And it is 8 hours of theory. It does not apply to any software brand, but it is just old school theory that I learned when I was 17. And we used to sell this at events for $299. So if you were at one of my events 15 years ago, this DVD set was available for $300. And we sold like 10,000 copies over the course of a year, so it was pretty good. But I did not retire it. I discontinued it from DVD. You can't buy it on DVD anymore. But we include this as a free bonus within the first level of our Digitizers Dream course.
right.
So you can watch 8 hours of extra theory that is not software related. And you will be able to tell that it was done 20 years ago because the theory is the same now as it was then, but my hair was brown and now it's gray. So
Uh-oh, hopefully it didn't. It looked like it glitched a little bit, so
that's
hopefully
good.
you guys didn't glitch. So in a way, you answered Melanie Woodard's question, what's the average learning curve with all of the videos, as you mentioned, 3 to 6 months. So look at it as a college. You're taking a college course.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be really honest with you. It depends. If you want to do some basic things, then
Mhm.
it's not going to take that long. If you want to learn how to digitize artistic pictures that have detail, it could take years. You know what I mean? Like it really depends on the level of expertise you want to have.
Okay. Carmen English says, which is better, just using the mouse or a Wacom pad?
The Wacom pad, there is actually, Wacom makes, and this is not Wilcom, it's actually a company called Wacom, just so people don't get them confused. Wacom makes a pad that actually has a stylus. So it looks almost like a mouse pad, but you get a pen instead of a mouse. Those actually, in my opinion, are a little friendlier to use than a mouse. Because if I'm trying to be artistic and creative, there is a bit of a difference between holding this in my hand and holding this. This is, a little more fine-tuned, and this is like a big brick. So I am always going to go for the pen. But Wacom does, if you really fall in love with digitizing, Wacom makes monitors. They're called Cintiq monitors. And you're not drawing on a pad beside you. You're literally drawing on your screen of your computer. And that's what I do use, is a Wacom Cintiq monitor, because it just makes it so much easier to digitize.
Cool beans. So CMA asks, is underlayment always necessary? When I stitch on marine vinyl, there are a lot of times I won't use underlayment or very little, for example.
Yes, and I would agree 100%. There always are exceptions to the rules. You most times, yes, underlay. Let's put it this way. I always tell people, don't leave your house without underwear, and don't do embroidery without underlay. Okay? For the most part, on most fabrics, underlay acts as something that will stabilize the stitches and the fabric. So it's almost like putting a foundation down and then putting your stitches on top of the foundation. So it's really important to use underlay. But if you are using vinyl, a machine like the vinyl, there's literally no stretch either direction. It's not a fiber. And it is like leather. I mean, you also have to watch the density, because if you put too many holes in vinyl, you're going to literally be able to punch it out and it'll do bad things. So there's always exceptions to the rules.
Forever Blessed as I downloaded a lot of the fonts the other day. When I tried to open them, they didn't open. Why? Forever Blessed, are you asking about ESA fonts or something different? I'm hoping you're talking about in Wacom.
If it is the ESA fonts that she's referring to, on our site, which actually you download the ESA fonts from, on the side of the site there is a little thing that says how to install your ESA fonts. And we do, on that page, have a drop down for like 6 different platforms, because the Wacom Commercial E-Series has one place you put them. Hatch 1 has a different place. Hatch 2 has a different place. Genome has a different place. So we do have specific folders within the program files or the program data files of the software that they need to be placed in specifically to open properly within the software. So it's not one of those things where you click on a file and it comes up on screen. You actually have to put it within the software itself.
So you mentioned E5, and that kind of brings me to my own personal question, because I'm aware that E5 usually is used by the higher tier commercial digitizers and embroiderers. Wacom Hatch, does it give the option to digitize fonts, or is it digitizing font friendly? That's the question that I have.
You can digitize fonts in Hatch, but you can't make ESA files. And just so you know, Wacom is up to E4. So if you have E5, I want to know where you got it, because I don't even
I heard it wrong. Sorry.
Because I was going to be really jealous. I was going to, how did she get E5? What?
No, I don't have E anything, because from what I understand, the price tag on that is a few thousand. Am I not is that not right?
Yeah. It is. Let's put it this way. The commercial platform for Wacom, I do have both, because I've been using Wacom since the DOS days. But the commercial platform is kind of like Hatch on steroids. There is more buttons and icons and things than you can ever imagine, and it is not as user friendly. Well, actually, I can't say that. It's a lot more involved, and there is more options. So for somebody who is a commercial puncher and they can justify spending that much money, then yes, it would be a good fit. But at the same time, I can create any design in Hatch with the same results as in Hatch as I can my commercial E4 platform. So with the speed and the quality of stitches, there's actually no difference, which is kind of unique. Just so you also know, and this will answer your question specifically, the E4 platform does have a optional element that you can purchase to create ESA fonts. Okay. But keep in mind that any font is only as good as the digitizer who created it. And I'm not saying anything bad about your digitizing, but I'm just saying some people might say, oh, I'm going to make fonts. But if they aren't a good digitizer, then the fonts might not work that well. So it really is about the expertise behind it. And one other thing, this is probably too much information, but this might help you if you're thinking about that. The E4 software, if you do get the font generator, it will only work within that level of the program.
Okay.
So if you want to make fonts in E4 that will work in Hatch, it actually won't work.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Which is why I always save dongles in the commercial. I have dongles from probably almost a decade ago, and I still use them because they will work on that version and up. Do you see what I'm
Okay, got
saying?
you. Got
So
you.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah,
It's
at this point, if I digitize the font, nobody would be able to stitch it out. So I'm not worried about that
no,
just yet.
I've
Future.
seen. No, no, you're doing great. Actually, I've seen some of your. As I said, I've been creeping you on your channel. So.
Okay. Yeah, I do have a couple, just I think two, maybe three hatch videos. But like I tell them in the video, I'm not an expert. This is just my experience only. So, yeah, I'm trying to get there. Dana Pendarvis, thank you. Sorry if I'm butchering your name. The question she had is, does the aspect ratio change with the size, or do you have to reset it each time for each design?
Aspect ratio, I do, and I think I understand what she's saying. I will actually bring in my artwork and digitize it at the actual size that I want the design to be. Because the main thing is, if
Right,
you bring in artwork really big and start digitizing it and then try to make it smaller, that's always when really bad things happen because you're then breaking the rules of stitches. So I will usually always try to set my aspect ratio at the size that I know it wants to be in its smallest size, and then going up isn't as much of an issue as going down will be.
right,
Does that make sense?
right.
Hopefully that answered that question accurately, because there could be some other things going on there too.
If so, just clarify and we'll get to it hopefully. Shirley Stewart says, I took your class last August and afterwards I bought the software. I'm pretty sure I bought it from you, but I don't think I got the extra fonts. How can I find out if I should have them?
If you did get the software from us at an event, you would have definitely, and I don't have a package here because I haven't been on the road in a while, but we actually have a little vinyl sleeve with a colored, like a clam case type thing that
Hmm.
all the codes and instructions go in there. So if you did get it from us at an event, you would have a physical package that says Hatch on the front, and there will be serial numbers for your software and activation codes for your lessons and your fonts inside of that package. So hopefully you kept your original package, because that's where all of that would be.
Cool beans. We'll go back to something you just mentioned, but I do like the clarification of this question. Bear and Bloomworks asks, I know that John says to digitize at the size you want. Is it okay to increase the size when I want to, or do I have to redigitize again?
Actually, James, hold on one second. I'm gonna go dark for 1 second just to see.
No worries. And thank you all for your questions that you've been asking so far. We definitely appreciate it. Um, Always jot your questions down. You're free to ask the questions anytime you need to. It's no worries about that at all. So definitely, if you need to, you can throw your questions down. And I appreciate the questions. It's about 15 till, so we'll grab some more questions, but we'll wrap up at 11 so we don't keep them all night long. But thank y'all for joining us on the show. I definitely appreciate it. So I'm
Awesome.
gonna make
To
sure you're ready.
answer your question, I have James looking for a sample over there frantically, but usually I will digitize at the smaller size, and then increasing it is basically dependent on the design and how I digitized it. In other words, oh, he found it. Awesome. Okay, so here is a bulldog. Sorry, this is a Great
Oh,
Dane. Okay,
that's
so
cute.
this is a Great Dane, and he's really not that big. I'll try to get a nice clear close up of him. Come on, focus. There we go. Okay. So you can see that the fur effects and the detail are actually pretty good for a dog that size. And
Hmm.
I did that using a lot of object-based curve blends. And that's the size that I digitized it at. Now I use the stitch types when I did that, knowing that I would maybe want to make it this big someday.
Wow.
Okay? So if you look at the difference between these two, they are the actual same design. I did this design first, and then I took it in the software and literally blew it up twice the size, and that's the results I got. Now, I was able to do that because I have 37 years experience, and I knew what was going to possibly happen when I did that. You know what I mean? So can you digitize something and blow it up huge? Yes, you can, but you need to know what you're doing, number one, which is why you need education. Number two, you might have to modify some of the objects afterwards. Because when I take the nose on this little guy, and you can see his nose is actually a satin stitch, and I make his nose this big, that satin stitch now is actually longer than 7 millimeters. And
Right.
I had to make sure that I told the software to splice those stitches, because if I didn't, it would actually register a trim and a jump between every single stitch.
Wow. Okay.
So the machine would do something called invisible embroidery, which we don't like, you know. So it stitches and trims. So yes, anything's possible, but you need to understand the theory.
Rhonda Herring, and that's really cool. I love that design, by the way. Rhonda Herring says, so what he is saying is that Hatch is the opposite of Embrilliance when it comes to transferring fonts into the program.
I don't know if it's the opposite of Embrilliance. Embrilliance has I guess, a specific file format that is associated with the software, which is BX. So there's no other software in the world that will read a
Right.
BX font except for Embrilliance. So
Mhm.
it does great things within the program that it was made for. In the same way, the Wacom platform has ESA fonts, which are kind of the same thing, but they're actually, in my opinion, a little bit better because they're not stitch files. They are the actual objects, which means that you can change everything about them. So
Cool. Sheila Arkwright says, with your, and this is for Wilcom Hatch class, will I learn everything I need to know if I want to sell designs?
with time and patience and I guess training yourself and running lots and lots of samples. I mean, and you pretty much said it correctly, Eve. You said that if you want to do some sort of basic in the hoop projects, like making key fobs or doing something like, to be honest, that's a running stitch, and it's
Mhm.
more about creating the pattern and digitizing something that is kind of basic because it's a running stitch. It's very creative, but I don't think that would take you 2 years to learn how to do. But if you want to learn how to do something like this, that would take you a
Right.
little bit longer than making a key fob. So it really depends on what you want to set as your level or your goal.
Angela Johnson asks, do you have a video on how to bring in other fonts and change them into a Hatch font, or is that in the training? I'm adding that part.
No, there's no real way to bring in an existing font and turn it into an ESA file other than to bring it in and redigitize it as an EMB file, which means that it's object-based then as well.
Okay.
So uh, I'm sure, actually, this would be an interesting question for you, Eve. When you first got into this, were you a little confused between all these file formats?
Um, no, only because I have a history in doing computer programming, so understanding file
That.
extensions was kind
Okay.
of natural and it made sense. But there, it took a minute to realize that EMB was a Wilcom, and I could make changes on a Wilcom level. Whereas if I bring in a PD, no, like a JEF
Shape.
file
Yeah.
or DST, I can't change it on the Wilcom level. It breaks it all the way up into little pieces and stuff. And I
Yeah.
was pretty sad about that. But
Yeah.
that part, it took a minute to figure out. But once I did, it was
Yeah,
all good.
that's usually one of our first things when we start training people is to sort of explain the difference between a
Mhm.
expanded data, a machine file format, and a native file format. Because, like you said,
Right.
they're different kind of levels, and they
Mhm.
all have, some of them have more limitations and some of them have less as
Right.
you move up.
Right. Like our favorite DST who changes all your colors on you.
Your pink pigs become purple, right?
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. CMA says, I always have issues with satin stitches. Looks good in software, then stitches out thinner. Is this discussed in training? It drives me crazy.
Yes, it is. I always tell people that what you see on screen and what you get on your machine are always two totally different things. And that is usually the, I guess, push and pull compensation thing that we talked about before. The software should actually, if you have artwork and you digitize right on the lines of the artwork, if your pull compensation is turned on, it will overthrow those stitches a little bit to adjust for the pulling of the bobbin and the top thread. And then underlay is also where it is a foundation or a break wall, sometimes an edge run underlay, which runs perpendicular to the stitch that's going across. That actually stops the stitch from pulling any further like a break wall would. So you put all of this together, and then it starts to make sense as to why some stitches look clean and others don't. It depends on quite a few factors.
Awesome sauce. Stacy Click says, what is the digitizing challenge he mentioned? Do I have to have Hatch? I have Stitch Artists.
The Digitizing Challenge is free, and you do need to have Hatch to try it. And if you download the free 30-day trial from our site, we will automatically send you the challenge information so you can start right away.
Awesome sauce. Ms. Bickham says, does Hatch offer some type of photo digitizing?
Yes, it does. And here I have to be totally honest. I wish that I wish that one software program did everything perfectly, but it doesn't. I do actually use like 6 or 7 different programs. Even though I'm a Wacom user for 30 years, I do have and use other software programs. The best programs I personally have found for doing photo stitch are the PE and Palette. The Brother software does an incredible job, as well as Embird. I mean, Embird has incredible photo stitch capabilities as well. So Hatch, as much as I love Hatch and I'm a reseller, I just got to be honest and say that's not necessarily its strong point.
Okay. The Pamela Bradley White. I have Janome Artisty Digitizer. Do you think I would benefit from your program?
Yeah, actually, the embroidery world is a very small world, meaning that if you are located in the US and have Janome software, the original Janome platform was a Wacom platform. About a year ago, they actually, in North America only, not in globally, if you're located in Europe or Australia, they are still using the Wacom platform. But if you're in the US, they actually switched to a new program, which is the Artistic, and it is no longer made by Wacom. I personally, and this, I don't like to say anything bad about any other products, so all I'm going to say is it's not Wacom. So it's not as friendly and doesn't create the same type of effects. So I do think that you're trying Wacom, you'll see some definite ease of use and quality improvements.
Marsha Jones. Hi, John and Eve. Is this great for a first starter of embroidery?
As far as taking the challenge, yeah. I mean, Eve, you had mentioned right away to download that Digitizer's cheat sheet. And to be honest, that is just a almost terminology type of document that sort of explains what all of these terms are, like underlay, pull compensation, mapping, satin stitches, tatami stitches, and some of the rules associated with them. So I think that every embroiderer, as soon as you buy an embroidery machine, you should have some basic understanding of the terminology and the theory, because it will make things so much easier as you start running into all of these little bumps in the road. And I think you'll agree with me on that. When you first get a machine, it can be a little overwhelming.
It can.
Yeah.
It can.
But then there's people like you to help them.
Trying to anyways. I think this joint effort is going to work out just great. Melanie Woodard, I'm going to answer a couple of questions really quick because we're about to run out of time, but Melanie Woodard asked, can you digitize vector files? Yes, those are images. You may have to change it to like a JPEG, like it can't pull in PDF if I'm remembering correctly. But there are certain file formats you can pull in, like PNG and PDF. I just bought, no, sorry, that's not the question. So on asked a similar question that you answered earlier. She wanted to attend some of the webinars but couldn't because of the schedule, her schedule being all over the place. I do believe that you have a replay. How long are they available? So if you purchase the classes, they're lifetime, if I'm understanding correctly. You just log in and access your prior classes. I use Sewit Pro, so if I purchase Sew Art, will Mr. Deere's digitizing classes help me learn the basics and be able to apply the lessons to Sew Art? Yes and no. And the reason why I say that is because Sew Art is an auto digitizer where the program itself does the digitizing for you. Whereas in Wacom Hatch, there is an auto digitizing feature available, but you have control of your stitches, individual stitches. And there are some variables there that you can make some changes. And we usually refer folks to Clever Dog Designs for assistance with Sew Art, and she breaks it down a little easier. But the basics, like for instance, I do want to mention this before we run out of time completely. Go get the cheat sheet. Just go get the cheat sheet. If you're going to digitize, if you're not going to digitize, get the cheat sheet anyway. And the reason why I'm emphasizing that is because he mentions there's terminology on there. Empower yourself, get to know that terminology, make it familiar to you so that you will know when you come across something in a digitizing capacity, you'll know what's going on. Or when you're working with files, you'll know what to look for and what not to look for. So go ahead and grab that cheat sheet anyway, no matter what digitizing program you're using. All right. Ms. Leela Nelson asked, I have a Janome MBX. Am I correct that the first set of fonts that shows in the drop-down box digitized and the others are just auto-digitized by the software? I'm not familiar with the programs.
If I could answer that, if
Yes.
you pull down the drop down of the files or the fonts that are included within the software, I think it's a little red squiggly line. If there's a red squiggly line beside the name of the font, that means that it is a ESA font, and that is an object-based font. The software does also automatically convert TrueType fonts. So you can bring in a TrueType font into your lettering, type it in, and it will automatically fill it with stitches. Whether it does it properly or not, that is a completely separate issue, which means that you would need to probably edit or use your knife tool to start breaking apart objects and all that. So the answer to that question is it could be either TrueType or it could be a built-in font. If it is built in, then it was digitized by somebody who knew what they were doing. It was not auto-done.
And she also asked about the same Janome software. What format does the artwork have to be in before it can be opened? Because she says she has trouble opening some artwork.
Yeah, and there's where the actual software can have a mind of its own, and this is almost every program that I've run into. Sometimes I will bring in, let's say, a PNG file into Paint, and it brings it in fine, but I take that same PNG file and try to bring it into my Hatch or my Stitch Artist software, and it gives me an error. Generally, what I find is if that happens, I'll usually take it into a graphics program that comes with your computer, like Paint, and I'll bring it in and I'll resave it as a PNG, and then it will usually load in fine after I do that. Sometimes, as you probably know, Eve, sometimes artwork can have transparency built in and all that kind of stuff, and there can be some little conflicts. So I would just try resaving your artwork as another PNG, the same file format, but just try it again and it might come in just fine.
Dawn Manny, if you get the first Dream course for free, can you still get the deal on buying the other two?
Yes, we do have a drip campaign that if you do buy the software from us, we will give you the option to purchase the other two levels at a sale price. So, yep.
Is there training on using repositional hoops digitizing?
I have kind of stayed away from that one personally. I know that within our groups, we do have some of our admins who have touched on the subject of, I guess, splitting designs for multi-hooping. Coming from a commercial background and having the multi-needle machines, I haven't had to do that much, so I'm kind of hesitant to talk because I'm definitely not an expert when it comes to that. I know you have some big hoops, Eve, right? I've seen
Yes,
I've seen you hold them up.
yes,
So the best thing to do is to buy a multi-needle machine with a gigantic hoop. You can't go wrong.
yes, that's for certain. Two more questions. One, I saw, oh, I'm trying to auto digitize a 2 MB file and I'm getting a not enough memory error. What can I do to fix this?
That sounds like it might be a hardware issue.
Mm-hmm.
As far as your software, and it depends on the software program that you own, but most of the developers will have a minimum specs guideline of the hardware that you should have to run the program. And when they say minimum, they usually really mean that. I always have gone, I guess, a little above what I needed to make sure that if I bring in a large graphics file, it doesn't hang up the software.
Right.
A digitizing program is really like a CAD program. It's all about
Yeah.
mathematics,
Yeah.
so
It's
they get
memory
overwhelmed.
hungry.
Yeah,
Yeah. Rhonda Herring, will your digitizing software work with my brother's Stellar Design Center?
I wouldn't see why not. That design center, is that another software program, or is that? I thought the Stellar was a machine.
I'm not sure it could have the
Yeah,
software to come with it, but even with
yeah.
Wacom, you digitize a file and save it in whatever file format it is that your machine
Yeah,
uses. And it'll
and
work.
PES is a standard file
Hmm.
format for most brother machines, and this is actually what I found is regardless of the software you have, most software programs will allow you to save into lower versions of PES. And
Hmm.
I've always saved for years now in version 6, because if you save in version 6, it'll read anything from there and up. But if
Okay.
you save your designs in version 10, which could be the default, you might actually get some software, save your designs in PES, take it to your machine that might be 2 or 3 years
Yeah.
old, and it won't read it.
Okay. That is, I'm trying to make sure that those were the super important questions. I did see about a printout of all the shortcuts for the keyboard. That would probably be in the manual for the software. So you can
Uh,
check online for that. No?
yeah, it is. But if
Okay.
you do download the challenge from us, so if you get,
Hmm.
and this, you don't have to buy the software, but if you download the 30-day trial and you
Okay.
actually download the lessons, which are on YouTube, but you download the files for the lessons, one of the files that I include is this one right here, which is John's favorite hotkeys. And I
Nice.
have given a list of all the hotkeys that I use every single day for the last 25 years, and they make you really quick. Any hotkeys that you can use within any software program, I don't know about you, Eve, but 2 thumbs up, it just makes your life so much easier.
It does. It does. Then there's, I'm sorry, one definitely last question, but it ends on a note that I really want to emphasize as well. Hello, John. Miss Debbie D says, could you explain what Embroidery Legacy Design Club is? There is a link in the description below for the Legacy Design Club. The link is in the chat for the cheat sheet. Just check that description box for those links. But for right now, what is the Legacy Design Club? Embroidery Legacy Design Club.
To kind of put it into a nutshell, on our website, we actually sell our designs individually like most companies do. So this little dog here that you saw is, I think, $3.95. I mean, all our designs are the same price, which I think are reasonable for the quality. But if you become part of our design club, then you pay one amount for the entire year. And depending on the level, whether it is, the gold or diamond or whichever level it is, you get between 20, what is it, James? I forget how many downloads, like 50 downloads per month. So you can actually it works out to, I think like 27 cents for a design when you become a member. So you can end up getting this guy for 27 cents if you become a member for a year. And we do not hold your credit card on file. We don't auto charge every year. You have the choice every year of signing up again, and it's a one-time fee.
Nice. Now the ESA fonts. someone did ask about the ESA fonts and what fonts come with the software, but if when I purchased mine, and I'm sure it's the same way, you get fonts for free. You pick the
Yes.
fonts that you want, right?
Yeah, we on our Digitizing Made Easy site, there is under Hatch, it says fonts, I guess ESA fonts, and it'll take you
Hmm.
to our font site. We do have at this point over 800 optional fonts, so you can browse at your convenience. And we sell them almost in like points. So when you buy the software through us, we give you 10 points, and you get to choose any 10 fonts out of the 800, and those will load directly into your software. So we have them broken up by category. Individually, they're like $10 per font. But if you are a font addict, you can buy them in bulk, and the price comes down to like $2.50 each.
Right. And from time to time, there are sales on the ESA fonts. I'm
Yes,
very
there
well
are.
aware of that.
There are. Yeah.
So thank
Actually,
you
oh,
so
James,
much.
hold on. I'll close on this. Can you grab me those really, really quickly? Just so you can see. Here's some fonts. You guys are getting a sneak peek. Grab all those. Yep.
I love his
That's good.
sneak
That's
peeks.
good. Yeah, this is a sneak peek. These, believe it or not, are fonts. So this is a font that I did, and it is an ESA skull font. So if you look at that, that is actually a font. Those are 2 letters in the alphabet. And then I did one here. These are actually a bat font and a spider font. So, and very, very quickly I created those. And these here are a couple fonts that I did for fancy stars. So that's kind of the cool thing, is we are taking fonts to a whole new level.
Very cool. Very, very, very cool. So, do they get points for taking the classes, or how do they gain points? It's only for purchasing the software.
Yeah, if you purchase software, we give you bonus points. And as you
Okay.
said, we do have giveaways sometimes. I know that
Okay.
we have a free ESA font on our, I guess, our font site, so you can download that one to try it. And we are going to be posting a brand new free. Every once in a while, we like to switch them out. So even if you did download the free font previously, in the very near future, we're going to have a brand new one there for you to download as well. And that magic word, free. Everybody loves free.
Well, for you guys, I first of all thank you, Mr. Deere, for joining us. You and James for assisting. And I did do it right, James, right?
Yes.
Because I get them mixed up sometimes.
Yeah, I
But
have a Jesse and a
uh,
James.
I know, and that's so cool. But thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us, and we definitely appreciate it. You guys, those links are in the description below. I'm also going to repost all of these links in the Facebook group as soon as we're done with the video tonight. So be on the lookout for that. And I'll also give a direct link to his website as well, and a link to the cheat sheet. So if you miss it in the
Yes.
chat, you definitely can pick it up in the Facebook group. And once that design is posted in the Facebook group, I have no issues later on adding it over to the Welcome Hats group, because I'm in that group as well. So
And
thank you
do me
so
one
much.
favor, if you could
Sure.
just give me 48 hours to get
Okay.
that file converted into all the
Right.
file formats, and I'm going to run a sample to make sure that it actually looks half decent, and I'll get that to you within 48 hours.
No worries. We appreciate you doing that for us. So, you
Thank
guys,
you.
thank you so much for joining us this evening. It was a blast, and I look forward to any other questions you guys may have. You can drop them in our Facebook group, and if it's a question I can't answer, I'll reach out to him and see if we can't get that answered. But those classes are there. Take them. Please take them if you're interested in digitizing. It's well worth it, because you will come up with an idea that you want to have digitized. So definitely check that out. And even at the very least, get the cheat sheet. All right. There's a PDF, a link right up under the video box for the PDF, and you can just grab the cheat sheet and watch the video while you're at it. So, but you guys,
Awesome.
thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you very
We
much. I
appreciate you
appreciate
being
it.
here.
Thank you.
And we look forward to seeing you guys next week. Probably won't be as exciting as John Deere being here with us, but we'll have a video next week. We'll probably be diving into some vinyl and sublimation. So look forward to seeing you all on our next go around. Thank you so very much, and y'all have a good night. Bye.
Bye-bye.